Quick kind of reminder about the assignment. You're doing 3 different oil pastel drawings of the same object. Your goal for class today is to get 2 of the 3 drawings done. If you finish all 3 drawings, then maybe you continue on to do a 4th or a 5th. We'll finish them up next week. So today I'm going to do a quick demo. Then you're going to work for the whole rest of class, getting 2, maybe 2.5 done. Then next class you'll finish the 3rd, or if you kind of get ahead, you might do it a 4th or 5th. And then we'll put them all together into one sort of finished work of art. And then we'll turn it in on Classroom and all that good stuff. Oil pastels go really quickly. The other thing I want you to remember is they're messy, and it's okay. That's just part of the material. So if they start to look kind of like messy and weird, my best suggestion is for you to hold it up at arm's length and look at it at arm's length, because doesn't that look so much better from farther away? No one ever looks at your artwork as close as you do. So don't hesitate to just like pick it up, hold it out at arm's length, and then you'll be like, holy cow, that like actually looks really good. If your oil pastels start to get dirty, you guys can grab paper towel. I think there's a roll of paper towel back there by the sink. You guys can get your own paper towel, and remember that you're just going to wrap that paper towel around the end of the oil pastel and kind of twist that oil pastel in there to get all that clean. Especially the white one, the yellow one, those will get really dirty. And don't be afraid to use these like little nubs. They're totally fine. You can sort of see this one's flat on the end. I've actually been using this one on the side. So if you have like little short ones, don't be afraid to use them. The other thing is your paper. I'm going to find one. If the little wrapper stuff is getting, I don't have any that are, well, no, I don't really have any that are too short. But you can kind of tear them back just a little bit. Remember that. If you have some that you tear off, like if this whole little sticker thing comes off, don't put it back in the tray. Kids are putting it in the tray, and that's really annoying. Put it into a paper towel. And the other thing is, make sure you're using a clean towel. Once your towel starts to get dirty like that, get a new paper towel and keep your stuff clean. If you also don't have a paper clip, there's a whole bunch of paper clips up here, and I can give you another one. I gave you a scrap piece of paper. I have this scrap piece. I can keep working on it. Some of this oil pastel is going to get on the back of my paper, which is okay. Don't flip this over and then start using the scrap paper on the other side, because all that's going to do is then transfer all of this oil pastel onto the table, which is just going to make a bigger mess. If your scrap paper starts to get too messy, just give me a shout, and there's paper up here in the front. Just come and grab a scrap piece of paper. So quick refresh on the practice. Whatever color, so this is one of my reference photos I was using, and I started doing it on the white paper, and I just felt like it was really flat and kind of boring, and I was like getting frustrated trying to work on it. And then I thought, well, what if I try it on some brown? And I just switched. Instead of like continuing what was making me unhappy, I grabbed a different color of paper and I started testing on the brown, and I didn't really like how the greens were looking on the brown. And then I actually started, this is a different plant obviously, but I started doing some blue, on the blue paper, and I kind of liked it better. So keep that in mind. That's the other thing. Like if you're working on a color of paper and you're not loving it, maybe stop, do a quick contour line drawing on a different color paper, or just grab a different color paper. They're up here on the front table too. Grab a different color paper, don't even do the contour line drawing, and just try, because I actually switched. Remember, I started this one on white paper, and I switched to the blue paper, and holy cow, it just looks so much better than what's happening on white paper. So don't be afraid to switch those colors. Either way, even if you have your colors and you love them and you're awesome, grab some extra paper. This is just my tester. I've been you can see I'm playing around with blending some colors together. So practice before you actually kind of start working on your finals. The other thing, I don't want you to forget all those amazing techniques that we used. Let me get to this page. Think about your varying pressure. When I kind of do a refresh demo, I'll talk about this in a second. About grading. Think about stippling to start building in some textures. I have a student, first block, who is doing a fish, and the fish has all those little scales, and he was actually stippling the scales on there. Think about your hatching and cross hatching. I will remind you of what it's like when you stipple or hatch or cross hatch one color on top of another color. Obviously, remembering your blending, don't forget your shadows, and I'll talk about this in a minute also, your shadows with your complementary colors. And this Sgraffito could end up being a savior for some of you. So don't forget all of these techniques that you have as you're working, like think maybe I could try some stippling, and that would be helpful. So I just want to kind of remind you of a few things. I've got my reference here. This is the one that I worked on this morning. And I started working on that other leaf and I was getting frustrated by it. So I actually put it aside and then I started this one this morning. I did all of that in probably 20 minutes. And obviously I've got a little more experience with this than you guys, so I'll work a little faster than you. So you should absolutely be able to get 2 of them done today. And maybe not done, but maybe to the point where like you're done and you put it aside and you come back and you do some finishing details next week. So I have my reference. Make sure you're looking at your reference for your highlights, your shadows, like different variations. Like this is more yellow now that I'm looking at it again. This green is a little bit more yellow, so I might even go in and start layering in some green. So pay attention to your colors, pay attention to your shadows, your highlights, your details, all that stuff. Now, you can see I started some background, so like this is the farthest away, this is far away, this is the far away. Just like when we did graphite and when we did colored pencil. Remember, you started in your background and you worked your way forward. Now, what I want you to forget about is like official background. This is technically my background, but I'm using my paper color as the background. Same thing with this one. There's background is the yellow, and that's my background. Now, if I was doing something like this where I'm actually going to color a background in, then you start with that. Background is also your farthest thing away. So this leaf is my farthest thing away. That's where I started. Then I did this, and then I did this leaf, and I was going to continue, but I wanted to save that for the demonstration. So technically, I should have done this whole leaf first and then gone over and done this one, but I wanted to save that for you. So you're working your way background to foreground. Also think about when we did graphite and colored pencil, you worked general to specific. So you started and just laid down a general area of value, or with color, with your colored pencil, let's say with your M&Ms, and then you started building shadows and highlights, and then you got in there and did all the details and crisped all the edges. Same thing applies, even though this is oil pastel. You're going to put down general areas of color, and then you start building and working more towards your details. So all these little like darker lines, I kind of save those for last, and I might even go in later and kind of really refine those. If you have something like the seeds of the watermelon, that's going to be kind of like your last little thing, especially if it's something that's black. So what I did with this is I first just started practicing like what colors would I use and how would it work. Obviously I need my greens, and I use white, but then I need my complementary color for my shadow, so I have my red. Also, don't set these, like I can see this, I already got oil pastel in my background. It's okay, like this was just gonna stay blue. It's okay, I probably should not have set my oil pastels on there like I did, but it's, you know, it is what it is. Now, the other thing I can think about is how I said that there's yellow in the leaves, so I might use yellow. There's even potentially like some blue. Where's my reference? I could even think about maybe building some blues in there. So don't be afraid to like test that out. So actually right now, I'm going to see like what would happen if I brought in some blue. And it's not bad. Like if I think about some of those little finer details in there, the blue is kind of nice as compared to the red. So practice on a piece of paper. When you're ready to commit, then get out your final thing. You'll work on top of your scrap paper. Don't make the mistake I make and set those on top of your drawing, because that's going to happen. And I'm going to start working. Remember your blending and layering. I think sometimes students are like hesitating to put down a lot of oil pastel. It's not like colored pencil. Within reason, you can continue layering and layering and layering. Think about, remember when you did your candy, when you did your colored pencil lines, you did them in the curve of the candy. You're following the contour. You're going to do the same thing for this. So if I'm doing this, now, don't draw in a way that your hand is smudging. Like maybe I'm going to turn this upside down, turn my reference, or sideways, whatever. Turn my reference sideways. So try not to get your hand all through, or grab another piece of scrap paper if you need one. So as I start building this, I'm going to think about my lightest area. Where's this other one? This one I did. My lightest area is like a white or a really light green. So you can see here I actually put down some white before I started building the other colors. You can't tell I did it here, but I did the same thing. I put down white, and then you start building those layers, and you always go light to dark. Doesn't matter what material you're using. You start light and you go darker, because you can always darken, but you can't always lighten. So I'm just going to start and like lay down. It's hard for me to draw that way. Lay down areas of color, keeping the direction of my oil pastel in the direction of whatever I'm drawing. And I'm still looking at this, paying attention to seeing where like my shadows and stuff are. So I not like burnished, so to speak. You can still see paper through there. But then I'm going to think about where I have, I'm actually going to start with a darker green, where I have some of these little bit darker areas. And so I might go with some of my green and then start thinking about where I have little dark, like there's a pretty dark kind of line. There's a dark area in here. And I layer that color. I can even, if I want to go a little bit more, I can get some of my red. And you start and sort of take your time and like layering down areas of color. Maybe I'll start doing some of those little lines. Don't be afraid to use this end of the oil pastel either, like that flat end, because I can get a more precise line than I can with the fat one. And like if this is darker down here, I might go in with my darker and start layering more colors, and then I might go back in with my red and get some of those details. And then you can even, now if I go with my lighter green, now I'm doing like more pressure and I'm blending. So watch what happens. See those green and red lines? I'm going to do the lighter green on top of it, and they're going to kind of blend in so that they're not so like precise anymore. They're like smudging into that other color. And I can keep kind of going in with my darker color. I could even go in if there's a part that seems a little more yellow. I could try to layer some yellow. It's pretty subtle. You might not even see it on the screen. And then you can almost use white like your colorless blender. So if I don't want to add any more color into here, but I want those things to kind of blend together, I can start layering some white on there. But if I have a highlight, like up here I have a pretty strong highlight, then I can just kind of, that's more detail-y stuff. That would be like the end of the road stuff, but I'm telling you now anyway. I could go along the edges here where I have these stronger highlights and press a little harder and get those highlights in there. And so I'll just keep building and building and looking at my reference. I'm never going to get this level of detail. It's the biggest struggle you guys are going to have with these oil pastels, is that you're going to want all of the detail and the crisp edges, and you just have to like let that go. It's kind of like working with watercolor. You're never going to get that precise detail like you have with a colored pencil or with a graphite pencil. So remembering background to foreground, general to specific, light to dark, building your layers and saving your little details like your little highlights and stuff kind of until the end. Remember your emergency paper towel, like when we had watercolors. Let's say I put too much of a color in there. I can just grab that paper towel, and within reason, you'll see I can't lift off everything, but I can lift off some of that oil pastel off of the paper. And what that does is it pulls the oil part of the pastel off the paper, and it gets me back to like the tooth of the paper. So then if I want to go in and put white on top of that, look how much more like bold that white is than if I tried to do white just on top of another color. So if you have like too much or a wrong color or whatever. The other thing, remember we talked about this when we did our practice, the poor man's blending stump, where you like take your paper towel and you twist it around, you can wrap it around a pen or a pencil. And so now I've got this like basically blending stump, but it's just made out of paper towel. And I can do the same thing. I can lift some off. I can even blend with it, like I've made a little point. So if you don't want to add more oil pastel on top of it, because you do a lot of blending by blending one oil pastel into the other. If you don't want to add more color, you can use your paper towel, but remember, it will lift off some of your color. The other thing is, if I start thinking about some of the highlights, like in between these dark lines, I have light lines. So I could use that paperclip sgraffito technique, and I could go in there with either end and actually pull some of that. You probably can't see this on the projector, but I can pull some of that graphite off. Oil pastel off. I can even use the other end and pull some of that oil pastel right off of there. So that might be a detail-y thing, but don't forget about using that that paper clip to get some of your like extra details and stuff in.